As a gun owner, you need to know your rights when dealing with the police, especially if they happen to see something as simple as a single bullet in your car. Could that single bullet give the cops all they need to do a full-blown search of your vehicle? As a former prosecutor turned people's lawyer, I've seen how something as simple as a speeding ticket can get out of control very quickly if a police officer sees a bullet in your car. This is one of these scenarios that catches people off guard and if you're not careful, could land you in serious trouble. In this video, we're going to cover what happens if police happen to see ammo in your car, what type of legal justifications they may try to take in order to search your car, and what you can do to protect yourself in this situation. After all, even though it's legal for you to own that bullet, it could still lead to your arrest if you don't know how to exercise your rights. In fact, if you don't know what probable cause means in this situation, you could lose more than your ammo and your gun. You could end up losing your freedom. I'll walk you through a real court case where this exact situation played out. I'll give you the exact law on what the court provided. That way, next time you find yourself driving down the road, if a police officer sees ammo in your car, you can protect yourself. So here's the question. Can police search your car if they see a bullet sitting in plain view? We all know police can't just pull you over for no reason. But a single bullet? Is a single bullet really enough to establish probable cause for an officer to get you out of your car and search the entire car for a gun? So here is the case scenario. Police officers walk up to a parked car parked in one of the entrances of a motel parking lot. The police officers then walk up and ask the men in the car why they are parked in the entryway of the motel parking lot. They then respond to the police officers by saying they're just sitting there waiting for their friend to arrive. However, during this consensual encounter, the police officer pulls out his flashlight, he starts shining around inside that car, and what does he see? He sees a single bullet sitting on top of the center console. Of course, as soon as the police officer sees that bullet, he orders both men out of the car and they do a full-scale search in the vehicle. The search revealed 5 more rounds of ammunition in the coat pocket of the driver, and they also found a gun under the floor mat. But was this search legal, all over a single bullet? That's exactly the case of People versus Collier. After Collier was arrested, he argued that the evidence had been taken illegally by the police and that it was actually seized and should not have been used in court because it was an illegal Terry frisk and search. I've covered several videos about Terry stops and the importance of how cops use them as a pretext to search people. So it's important, if you want to learn more about those, go check out those videos. But here, the court had 2 specific options available to them in making a decision on the Collier case. They could rule, number 1, that it was a legal search for the police because the presence of a single bullet put the officers in a position of being concerned for their officer safety. Or number 2, unless these guys were acting suspicious in some way, the mere presence of a single bullet was not enough to establish reasonable suspicion for the officers to perform a search, which would make this an illegal search. Now, want to guess how the court ruled here? Unfortunately, they ruled that it was a legal search because the court was concerned that the presence of a single bullet, even though it's legal, could place the officers in a place of officer safety concern. This case brings up a really important question. We are supposed to live in a country where we have Second Amendment rights, where it's legal to possess a firearm, and it's certainly not illegal to possess ammunition. So are you telling me that a single bullet, absent any other suspicious circumstances, and the cops deciding not to even make sure that the driver is eligible to possess the firearm, are you telling me that gives cops enough reasonable suspicion to conclude that some criminal activity is taking place? Although it is logical to assume that the presence of a bullet could indicate the presence of a firearm, owning a firearm is not per se illegal. This seems like it should be obvious that a court would not allow a search here, but unfortunately there's a split between state and federal courts on this issue. So where do we start here? We all know that in order for a police officer to search you, they must have some type of probable cause. Well, here, police officers during a traffic stop are relying upon the motor vehicle exception to a warrant in order to perform the search. That means they specifically need probable cause for this search. So can police justify having probable cause to search your car if they see a single bullet and that's it? No, because the real issue here is what else are the cops going to claim they see or hear when they're talking to you and they walk up and they see that single bullet. If cops go to court claiming that the single bullet gave them the justification to search your entire car, there's a good chance that that search would be ruled illegal, unless you live in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals jurisdiction. Under the Third Circuit Court of Appeals analysis, it all comes down to your local jurisdiction's laws regarding weapons possession. States that provide that the possession of a firearm is presumptively legal. In some of the cases I'm going to refer to you, they came from the Virgin Islands. You see examples of this in Texas. In that situations, the cops need more. They can have the presence of a bullet, but they have to have additional circumstantial evidence in order to establish probable cause to search your entire vehicle. What the Third Circuit Court of Appeals does here is they basically create this presumption that it's illegal for you to have this firearm. And what it does is in many ways puts the burden back on you to show that you could legally have this firearm, which means we're talking here about a concealed carry permit. So, if you live in a state that does not support gun laws, you could be in a tough place because there's this presumption of it being illegal, and now the cops can take almost any tip or any evidence and substantiate it as a way to search you and your entire car to see if they can find your firearm. Now, I've placed cases all over the screen right here for you to look at. We've got United States versus Ubilis, we've got United States versus Gatlin, United States versus Lewis, and Minnesota versus Timberlake. These cases are really important, and if you want to dig deeper into them, you'll see where exactly this situation came up with the Third Circuit particularly showing this presumption of illegality when carrying a weapon. Okay, but what if you don't live in the jurisdiction of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals? Can the cops still use the presence of a single bullet as a way to justify searching you and your entire car? The simple answer is no. But the problem here is that smart cops are never going to show up in court or put in their police report that we were relying upon the fact of a single bullet as a basis to substantiate searching the entire vehicle and the defendant. You'll never see that. Smart cops just don't talk like that. Smart cops will say and write things like this. As I approached the driver, I noticed that there may be a reason to believe there is additional evidence in the car when I noticed that, number one, he seemed to be extremely nervous. In fact, he was making furtive movements, which made me uncomfortable. But secondly, I also noticed that he was wearing an empty holster on his side, which led me to believe there may be a firearm in the vehicle. And thirdly, I also noticed magazines. And where there are magazines, there are bullets. And where there are bullets, there's likely to be a gun. Smart cops would fill up their police report with the same information they would need in order to get a warrant, even if all that information is just based off of that cop's opinion about what happened, and it couldn't be challenged by anybody but the driver himself. In reality, most courts, other than those in the Third Circuit Court of Appeals jurisdiction, they're going to rule that it's an illegal search if cops are relying upon the presence of just a single bullet in order to search your entire car. But cops are just not going to do this unless you're talking about a rookie cop. Almost all of them are going to add things like furtive movements, sweat coming down his brow. He seemed nervous. He didn't respond timely. I thought I saw him looking over at his glove box. They will try to add all of these together to make it appear that there is enough here to establish reasonable suspicion for the search. So, how do you protect yourself in this situation? Number one, do not consent to a search, ever. There's no good reason to ever consent to a search. Sometimes people tell me, well, I've done nothing wrong. I'm going to go ahead and let the cop search my car. Do you understand that depending on this police officer, he could get you out of the car. He could literally start to rip your car apart. Police officers, if they believe something's in your car, if you give them consent, they can search anything. I've literally seen officers take the back seats out of cars, rip out everything in that vehicle, and you're sitting on the side of the road for hours. So number one, do not ever consent to a search. Number two, you can exercise your right to remain silent and not answer any questions without an attorney present. Remember, your Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights here are some of your best friends whenever a police officer comes up to you and he's already acting accusatory to you. By exercising these rights, you're making it clear you're providing them no additional information that they can claim is a basis to now search your car, and you're standing on your constitutional rights. Number 3, record everything. If you have your phone, not only do the audio, but the video recording. If you have a dash camera, turn it over, record the entire situation from start to finish. You want to document what actually took place. So that way when you look at that police report and the officer stacks it with all this other stuff they claim you did, you're able to challenge it and show the court that the only thing they had here was a single bullet. You have a fundamental right not to be subjected to arbitrary stops and searches just because the police think you might have done something wrong. Even if a police officer does see ammunition in your car, everywhere except for the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, the police must respect your right that you have to own and possess ammunition, and they must follow the standards set out in Terry v. Ohio. What is that standard? The burden is on the police to establish specific articulable facts that establish that your behavior, in addition to the possession of that single bullet or ammunition, was somehow suspicious above and beyond that. If they cannot establish that, it should be considered an illegal search. Cops just cannot act on a gut feeling or vague information. They must have specific information, not just the presence of a bullet, that actually leads a reasonable person to believe some criminal activity is taking place. This is not about getting away with anything. It's about ensuring that our rights are protected. It's also about holding law enforcement to the standard under the law to ensure that our privacy rights are not being violated. Knowing your rights and when they can be exercised is the best way to not only protect yourself, but to make sure and hold the police accountable. Now, speaking of knowing your rights during a traffic stop, did you know that police can lie to you? That's right. Check out this next video where I break down police lies and dumb questions and what you can do to protect yourself from them. See you over there.